We are basically in Adar, and we're very close to Purim. Even though we had a Purim cotton, which is, what's called a minor Purim, but we're coming up very fast to the Purim itself. And one of the things which I feel is always very important is to understand what's called the essential idea of every holiday. Just before I begin, this Shiur should be a blessing and a merit for the health and success of the families of Reuven Bas Yosef Reuven, or for the health and success of the families of Regina Bas Yosef Reuven, and Yeshaya ben Yisrael, Benjamin Wolf, ben Tzvi Hersh, and Baruch ben Benjamin Wolf. Shiur should be in the Fralias and the Shema for all these people. Because every Yom Tov, every holiday in Judaism has many things going on, many halachas. So obviously, sometimes it's difficult to ask or to discern what exactly is the essential idea of the holiday. You see, and that's very important, not to lose the essence of the day itself. And it's not always easy to find it, especially when you have many halachas. Like Pesach, there are many halachas. So the question always is, in Pesach anyway, at least, what exactly is going on? What's the essential idea of, let's say, Pesach? Well, Purim is a major Jewish holiday, and we know that. Even though it's rabbinical, it's not biblical, although there are illusions in the Torah for Purim, as Chazal point out. But basically it is rabbinical. So what we want to try to get a handle on in terms of Purim, what is the essential idea of Purim? It's a very powerful question, because when you look at the essence of something, you're not looking at a minor idea, obviously. When you look at a holiday that's been going on for over 2,000 years, and has been occupied so much by Klal Yisrael, the day itself, and there's so much going on for them, this isn't a small matter. So therefore, in many ways, it behooves us that we try to find out what is the essential message of Purim. It's a very important idea. And obviously, in that special message of Purim, is something that we have to take away, because, there's a thing called a teaching moment. In many ways, every holiday is a teaching moment. It has a certain idea, besides the mitzvahs and halachas and so on, that it wants us to know and to believe in as a guide, you see, for our lives. Very important. So that's the question I wanted to ask. What is the essential message of Purim that must loom to be very important for obvious reasons, because Purim is such a great holiday and so on, And there's one of the Chazals which say, which is bigger, Yom Kippur or Purim? So we would basically say, well, obviously Yom Kippur must be greater. But Chazal tell us, no, Purim is greater. Because Yom Kippur is called Yom Kippurim, which means Yom, a day, Kippurim, like Purim, but not Purim. And that remez tells us that the message of Purim is greater than the message of Yom Kippur. You see, and we have to understand why. How can that possibly be? And so on. And certainly that's one of the ideas that I would love to explain and so on. you see. Second idea, which I'd like to mention, is if you think Purim happened more than 2,000 years ago, which of course historically it did, so we say to ourselves, well, what relevance does Purim have today? You know, has the story of Purim ever been repeated? Now, in a certain sense, of course it has. Because when we look at the historical event of Purim, which it does have, when we look at the personalities, the characters connected with Purim, we obviously see minimally two very evil people and two heroes. We have Achashverosh and we have Haman. And then we have the heroes of Purim. We have, of course, Mordechai and Esther. Is it possible that these kind of people are repeated throughout history? And of course the answer is yes, because Jewish history is replete with the attempt to destroy all the Jews in all its various forms. There's probably no nation on earth that has been persecuted for thousands of years and that has had so much attempts at really genocide of the Jewish people. But the truth is that when we think about that, so we look today, is it possible that in the year 2024 that we actually see the real message of Purim taking place? Now that would be incredible, because that would mean that the message of Purim, right, in many ways is eternal. It will be, it always has been. And what I would like to show tonight is that we are living a Purim story. We don't look at it that way, you know, but the truth is that we really are living a Purim story. And I mean its essential message. And I don't even mean the message of the anti-Semitism all over the world. I mean, that's obvious. You know, it happened in Purim, where Haman advised Achashverosh to kill all the Jews. But I mean that the essential message of Purim exists today. And I'd like to show you how that in 2024, we are seeing the Purim story reenacted in its essential way. That's not an easy feat, because it has to be, again, the essential message. So therefore, I'd like to talk about that and why obviously the message is so important, because it's really repeated over and over again. Okay, now the question we have to ask is, why did Purim happen? Now, we know the story, you know, the Megillah which tells us the story, started off, of course, with this lavish affair, supercated affair, called the Suda of Purim. In terms of Achashverosh, he made this incredible, affair, and he invited the Jews and so on. And the Chazals tell us about the meaning of the affair and so on, you know. Apparently, a lot of the Suda had to be, because Achashverosh felt that the Beis Hamikdash, its time when it should have been rebuilt, passed. So he didn't have to worry about the Beis Hamikdash being built, and he would have to give his kingdom, and so on. So he made this huge Suda, and the Jews partook of it, which when you think about it is really terrible, because they're actually engaged in a Suda, a meal, right, that celebrates that their salvation will not come. And as far as I remember, they had Kalim of the Beis Hamikdash during the Suda. Now that clearly was a terrible sin, and so on. And that's how the Megillah starts. But the real story of the Purim itself happened years later, where you had this individual, Haman, who hated the Jews, classic anti-Semite, and so on, without going into, what his end of the idea was. And he obviously convinced Achashverosh with payment, fortune of money, that Achashverosh should allow him to issue a decree to kill all the Jews. Genocide. And what's interesting about Purim is that this was the last time that all the Jews were under one kingdom. After that, they spread out. But at that time of Purim, it was the last time that all the Jews would be under one kingdom, and therefore it was possible to have a true genocide of the entire Jewish people. You see, that itself is very interesting. And Achashverosh agreed, of course, and then the story is, of course, Esther becomes the queen, and the whole story then evolves where Esther is able to convince Achashverosh of the evil of Haman, and Haman is killed. It's called the V'nahapechu, the exact opposite of what he planned happened to him. And of course the Jews survived, and this is the basic story. So when you look at it, you say to yourself, well, this is really a story about rescue. Basically what it is. The Jews were threatened with genocide, and they were saved. They were rescued. So that would seem to be the essential idea that we have to take, right? That the Jews were rescued. And what that means, of course, is that the Ribono Shel Olam will always rescue the Jews, and so on. Now that certainly is part of the idea of what Purim is. But believe it or not, that's not really the essential message, even though clearly it's a major idea of Purim. So then the question is, what is the essential message? And we can ask, why did it happen? So the answer to that is, there is no such thing as a historical event that happens because of historical developments. Everything is a setup. That means every event that happens because it's part of the plan of creation. And therefore that setup or situation happens because it will place the Jews in a situation in which they will be able to advance the tikkun process. And that's why it happens. Now we don't always understand, well, how does it advance the tikkun process, the process of rectification, you see, of getting the world into Olam Haba. But every historical situation moves the world further toward that end, where the entire world will ultimately recognize God as the supreme being and introduce us to a messianic era, which will ultimately follow, which I've spoken about many times, into the future world. And we don't always see that. So therefore, this rule or formula is the same idea with Purim. Purim is a setup that had to happen based on the acts of the Jews. Well, how far back can we go? Because Purim is the setup. Because Purim is something which is what's called, like I say, something that had to happen in order to rectify a pagam, a defect that the Jews did. So for that, we have to go back to Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah itself. Now, what God wanted was that the Jews should accept the Torah out of a sense of love. That's what he wanted. So therefore, he gave the Torah Sheb'al Peh, and they did accept it out of love. They said, Naaseh, we will do, V'nishma, and we will understand. So they said, we will do, even though we don't understand, but we will labor to understand it. But if you're giving it, we take it on faith that it must be fabulous. Now, so that was Torah Sheb'al Peh, sheb'ksav, the written law. But when God gave them the oral law, then they said, no, we don't want it. And therefore, the Ribono Shel Olam, what did he do? He took Mount Sinai, and this is what the Medrash says, the Chazal, that he took the mountain of Sinai, he ripped it off its base, and the mountain hovered over the heads of the entire Jewish people. And he said, if you accept the oral law, fine. If not, I drop the mountain, it will bury all of you, and all of you will die. Which is incredible. So therefore, they did not accept the oral law out of love. They accepted it out of fear, obviously, because they wanted to live. That's why they accepted it. In other words, free will was taken away from them. They were compelled to accept the oral law. And this is what happened. Therefore, they created what's called a pagam, a defect, a damage in rectifying creation, because they should have accepted the oral law out of love. And this is the actual story, and that's what happened by Matan Torah. Now you could say, well, why can't the Goyim say, right? The non-Jews say, well, why didn't you compel us to accept the Torah? And we also would have accepted it, especially since you're threatening us. And the answer is obvious, because the Jews already accepted the Torah of the written law. It's just that the oral law they did not accept. So God said, so you accepted my Torah, but not all of it. You must accept all of it. Whereas the Goyim, as the Medrash points out, didn't accept any of the Torah. So God said, you don't want any of it, I'm not going to compel you. In other words, you have to accept some of it, and then I want you to accept all of it, you see. Now, what we have to ask is something very interesting. Why didn't the Jews want it? Why didn't they want it? So we now understand that the threat that God used to destroy all the Jews was not on the written law, it was on the oral law. And Tosfos says that because he asked the question, why would God compel them if they accepted the Torah Na'aseh v'Nishma? You see, which is really a superlative acceptance. So Tosfos answers that it was Torah sheb'ksav, the written law that they accepted, not the oral. And therefore the threat of death was on the oral law. Okay, so that's the event. Like I said, that is a pagam. But what is the pagam? What is the defect? What's the damage? You see? So for that we have to ask ourselves, why didn't the Jews want to accept the oral law? They were obviously thinking about something. You know? Is it because the oral law added so much more to the written law? Because the oral law is filled with a massive amount of details. Is that why? Or was there something else that the Jews felt that they really do not need the oral law? What I want to say is the following, and there is a certain logic to what the Jews felt. What was that logic? So that logic is as follows. The Jews said, look, we understand why you want to give us the Torah. Because the Torah is a document that is the path to get to Olam Haba. We understand. You know, you are teaching us about a religion, the concept of mitzvahs and so on, to get to Olam Haba. So therefore the path to Olam Haba, the future world, is the written law. But what do we need the oral law for? If you look at a great deal of the oral law, it's about social laws. It's what's called ben odom lechaveroi, between man and his fellow man. You see, you know, all the laws of ownership, marriage. There's so much. The whole Seder Noshim, all about marriage and ownership, and Ezekiel, all about damages. There's so much of that when you think about it, is really social. What does it have to do with religion, really? And not only that, we don't see why we even need this, you see. Why does it have to be given by God? Why? If you think about this, every nation has its laws. There's no such thing as a nation that has no laws. Why? Because from the time that mankind decided to live in society, I mean, as long as you're on your own, you can do whatever you want. But you can't survive on your own, because there's a great deal of things that you need from others. You don't have the time to make all your food, to grow all the food, to weave all your garments, and to go and hunt in order to eat. Everybody needs everybody else, and what we do is we buy it from them. So a person cannot really live alone. He's dependent on society, right, for his needs. So therefore, man must live together in a social setting. Yeah, but wait a minute, that'll never work. Because every person has unique needs. He has what he needs, you see? And what's going to happen is that everybody's going to want to fulfill their needs. So how do we live in a society when everybody wants to do what they want to do? Some guy takes a look and he says, I like your house. I'm moving in. So the guy's who owns the house says, what are you talking about? He says, well, I like your house. I'm moving in. I'm going to throw you out. Obviously, what is a law? A law is that which is enacted by society in order to preserve the ability of man to live in a society. Without laws, there's no society, you see? And we just go back to living alone, which we can't. So the basis of all laws in every society, because all mankind recognizes that, is you need to preserve society. You see? So what the Jews said is, wait a minute, why can't we just have the laws of the society that we live in? Or we'll make social laws like everybody else. Why does it have to come from God? You see? To preserve society, well, everybody's got laws to do that, and they did it on their own. God didn't make the laws of mankind, although he did give an intuitive ability of what laws make sense and so on. But basically, mankind makes up its own laws because they want to preserve society in order to function. So why can't we do that ourselves? Why does it have to be part of the Torah, which makes it a religious obligation? You see, society doesn't feel they have a religious obligation. Like I said, they do it because they want to be able to survive. Very simple logic. So why do we have to be, as they thought, encumbered by the laws of mankind to survive, right? Why does it have to have a spiritual overtone or undertone? You see? That was their logic. So the Moshe said, which is very important, he said, you don't understand. The laws of how a society can exist together itself must be divine. How to live together. Because part of man's purpose is not only to practice laws between you and me, which is bein Adam l'mokum, but how to live together itself is divine. Because living together requires what? It requires truth, justice, and it requires righteousness. When you make a law, it's got to be righteous. It's got to be truly justice, you see? And when you take a look at the law books, what do you see? Do you know how many laws look like they're all arbitrary? They're arbitrary. And you wonder, how in the world could this be a law? There's so many illustrations of that. And not only do they look arbitrary, there are so many laws that are made to favor one group over another group, because that group that favors has the clout. So the law is not even just. It favors a particular section of society, you see. But what's worse is this, that is laws can be what's called abrogated. They can change based on the whims of society, you see. So if the laws are made by men, they can be canceled by men if it's to their benefit to cancel the law. You see. And so that's a very important concept. And the Baruch Hashem said, you don't understand that the law itself, in order to embody justice and truth and righteousness and holiness, has to itself be given by me, or else it won't even last. You will not even have a civilization if the laws are not divine. So therefore, to live with one another itself requires, right, divine intervention. And that's what the Baruch Hashem said to Klal Yisrael. But you don't understand that now, you see. So I need to teach you that. What does that mean? I need to create a situation that you will learn this. You know where you really see this? By Avraham Avinu, you see. Avraham Avinu went to Avimelech. We know that in the Chumash, you know. So he tells Sarah, his wife, don't say I'm your brother, or don't say I'm your husband, because you're a good-looking woman, they'll kill me, and Avimelech will take you for himself, which is what happened by Parai, and so on. In any case, the story winds, and Avimelech did take Sarah, so God, punished him, whatever, and he comes over to Avraham Avinu, Avimelech, and he says to him, wait a minute, why did you do this to me? Why'd you tell me that she's your sister? Why'd you tell me she's your wife? So Avraham Avinu said, if I would have told you that, you would have killed me and taken her. So Avimelech said something very interesting. He said, what do you mean? What do you take me for? We don't do this kind of stuff in this place. We're civilized people. We don't do this. We don't kidnap other people's wives, right, and take them. We don't break our laws like that, right? So Avraham Avinu said to him something very, very important, which is a profound truth. He said, when I came to this place, I took a look at your place, and I saw, there's no fear of God. What was the response? He said, you may have a law that you can't take somebody else's wife forcefully, but that law is only as good as you can get away with it. But if you ever can get away with it, and you want somebody else's wife, guess what? You'll break the law. And since you're Avimelech, you're the king, guess what? You want my wife, of course you can break the law and kill me. That's what he said. In other words, so the only guarantee that you yourself will observe your own law is if you know the law was written by God, that it's divine, and therefore you will be deterred because you will fear God. That's a very profound idea. Avraham Avinu understood that, you see. So what we begin to realize when we see this is that the laws itself are inherently flawed. Like I said, many of them are arbitrary. Many of them only cater to the rationale in that generation, but make no sense in the next generation. Many of them are made for the benefit of specific groups that favor, you see. And not only that, many of them can be broken and manipulated, you see. I mean, the classic is today, what we witness today, which is going on with Donald Trump. What they've done is made a mockery of the law, and they're charging him with stuff that even lawyers cannot believe what is happening. They shake their heads. So what do we see? You could take any law and manipulate it, and you could destroy anybody with the law, you see, because you know how to manipulate the law, and so on. So this is what we realize, that inherently anything man-made is flawed. So that's what the Baruch Hashem said. Only I can give you a law that is truly truth, justice, and righteous, you see. And therefore they're not subject to your whims, especially when they're given with the authority of God himself. And the Baruch Hashem said to Klal Yisrael, but to himself actually, I need to teach you that. So therefore what I'm going to do is to create an event well, you will actually see it, you see, and therefore you will reaccept the Torah with love. And that is very profound, you see. So that's what he did. Since the Rebbe is the master of everything, he created an event where Klal Yisrael realized this truth, that all laws are inherently flawed, and they can be distorted, they can be manipulated. That's even assuming that they're truthful and just. And so many of them are not even, they don't even have a reach, a smell of justice, and so on. As we see, like I said, how many laws are arbitrary, and so on. So what event was it that he would teach the Jewish people the nature of laws that are not made by the Torah, that are made by mankind's desire to preserve society? That story is really, when you think about it, that's Purim. That's really what Purim, the message is. What we begin to see, as I will explain, is that Purim is not just a story about rescue. No, it's about the concept that because the laws are divine, Torah laws, therefore they are true, and they cannot be bent because all of a sudden you want to benefit from them, and so on. But I have to show you. Now, one of the ideas why the Rebbe had to do that is because, okay, look, as long as the Jews are in Eretz Yisrael and they have the Torah, okay, so they don't realize the distortion of what a law really could be because they're not amongst the Goyim. But once the decree of Golus came in, and the first time the Jews were free men in a non-Jewish society, which by the way was Persia, because under Babylon they were basically sub-service, they were sub-citizens and so on. The first time they really became free people, okay, was under Persia, which is Haman and Achashverosh and so on. So what the Rebbe had to teach in that lesson, don't be enamored of different societies, even though they have laws that seem to make a lot of sense. But watch what they do when it benefits them to change or distort the law. So what happened? All of a sudden there's a guy, a tremendous anti-Semite, you see, and he has the ear of the king, Achashverosh, and he bribes him. He gives him 10,000 talents of silver, which I saw once, that's the equivalent of giving somebody $100 million, who knows, $100 million, maybe $400 million, phenomenal amount of money, because Achashverosh said to him, listen, you want me to allow you to kill all the Jews? That's a tremendous tax base. When I get all that money, you see? So he said, okay, pay up. And he did. And then he okayed it. Yeah, but wait a minute. There's something wrong here. Could you imagine living in America, right? And all of a sudden, the next day, right, the Congress comes out with a law, right, where they say, well, we've picked, September 1st, where it's now permitted for all the anti-Semites in America. It's a free day. You can kill any Jew you want with impunity, right? And could you imagine all of a sudden that's put in all the papers, television, and all the talk shows and so on, right? What do you think the Jews would say? The first thing they'd say is they'd be shocked. What are you talking about? We are loyal citizens. We have not committed a crime in any way. Why are you doing this? What happened to the law that you don't murder people? You see, we have not committed a crime. What is this? So the first week, the Jews would be in utter shock that a day has been marked in the calendar for the genocide of the Jews in America. You see? And then after that, what would happen? Then the Jews would begin to say to themselves, wait a minute, what kind of a country is this? This is supposed to be a country of laws, right? That is supposed to have truth and meaning and justice. Where is the justice? We are loyal citizens. You can't do this to us. Therefore, what we realize is your laws are garbage. They're only to preserve society, but not because they're real justice. And by the way, that's a very important distinction. What's the difference between legal and just? You see, legal means that if we all agree that this is what you have to do in a given circumstance, then that becomes legal because we all agree to it. Just has nothing to do with justice, because justice is the concept that whatever we're about to do to you, you deserve morally. You see, so we live in a legal society, but in many ways it has nothing to do with justice. I mean, especially today, like I say, there's no justice in America. These people have made a mockery of justice, as I will point out, and so on. So the second thing we realize is that the laws of America, if that's where it occurs, is legal, but it's not just. That's not truth. Where's the righteousness in this? You see, and we will then say to ourselves, wait a minute, so where are the laws that are just? Is it only mankind's laws? And then we will realize, aha, that's the Torah. The Torah is not legal, it's justice. And that's what it says. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdoif. In fact, it says it twice, right? Tzedek, righteousness or justice, twice you shall pursue. Why? Because not only the ends have to be just, but the means to the ends also has to be just. You know, that the ends justify the means. No, both must be just. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdoif. In righteousness, you shall be, have laws and so on, That's when we'll realize. So all of a sudden there will be what's called an unbelievable enlightenment that the Jewish people had. Well, guess what? That's exactly what happened on Purim. The Jews had a tremendous enlightenment on Purim because they realized, say, what, is this guy crazy? Achashverosh? Okay, so he was paid, and I'm sure he benefited from all that money. But in order to do that, he committed a vile deed, a terrible deed, genocide, for 10,000 talents, because he can get away with it, because he's Achashverosh, and so on. All you need is his ring, and so on and so forth. What kind of justice is that? Righteousness, you see? And that's what they realize, right? And therefore what the Rabbi did is incredible. He set up the Jewish people to be in this situation where he can demonstrate to them the evil of society or the flaw in the law of society. So with the Jews, when they saw this, they were shocked, you see. And of course then they had to do things to try to escape the decree and so on, you see. And now you understand why it says, La Yehudim ha'yisa oira v'simcha. And to the Jews was what? Oira, enlightenment and joy. So the question is, why was there enlightenment? What does that have to do with the story? It should have said to the Jews there was relief that they were going to survive. What does the enlightenment have to do with this story? And that's why I'm telling you that the real essence of the whole story is the enlightenment that happened. Because the Moshe said, I need to teach them what the nature of the laws of mankind really is. It's all about the preservation of society. It has nothing to do with justice. It's all legal, but it has nothing to do with righteousness or justice. And then what do you think the Jews did when they realized that? Once the Jews realized what they're seeing, because they never saw it, they lived among Goyim in Bavel, in Babylon, but they were not free men. It was in Persia that they really achieved real freedom, national freedom and so on, So they said, and so we become loyal citizens. In fact, what's so interesting is the Megillah starts off with the Jews joining the meal. That shows loyalty, right? Friendship, camaraderie with the nation that they're in. It's so interesting that the Megillah starts off with that story. And that's one of the reasons why it does start off with that story, to show, we expect that Achashverosh should have said, wow, they're joining me, even though it has something to do with their religion. They're still joining me. That just shows that they're loyal people to my kingdom and so on. Right? Yet a few years later, he betrayed them. The Megillah is a story of unbelievable treachery and betrayal, using the laws of Persia. So when the Jews saw that, there was a tremendous oira, enlightenment. And therefore Chazal tell us, and these are the famous words, Kimu v'kiblu. Kimu, they fulfilled, kiblu, and they received. In other words, what does that mean? They fulfilled what they had received earlier in Matan Torah, in the giving of the Torah. They accepted it out of love. You see, and that was an unbelievable, momentous occasion, that they accepted the oral law, not just the written law, but they accepted the whole oral law out of tremendous amount of love, because they realized the truth of what the Torah is, which is incredible when you think about that. That's what the Rebbe wanted to teach them, because the rest of they were now in history, the Jews were now going to go into Gullus and become part of different nations. So the Rebbe had to show them, don't fall in love with their laws. They can turn around in the next second and stab you in the back. And you won't even know it hit you. The rise of anti-Semitism from a nation that you would never expect, that is supposed to be filled with knowledge, right? Morality, ethics, justice. And they turn around and stab you in the back, you see? Think about what all that means, you see. So Purim is that. Purim is the setup that God had to teach the Jews before they would go into the Gullus, go into other nations. He had to make sure that you must learn this lesson. You want laws that are just? The only place you'll find that is the Torah. You will not find that in any nation in the world. And we see that throughout history. We see how the Jews were betrayed over and over again by different societies that they went through. And I mean real treachery. They were killed, maimed, mutilated, destroyed. And the incredible thing is we begin to see that something that's happening now. We are in America, right? And America in Israel was attacked on October 7th. But they were not just attacked, they were brutally attacked. In fact, the videos of this is so vile that you can't even really look at it. That's how vile it is. How abhorrent it is to look at this. You see, So anybody would say, they didn't just kill people, they mutilated them, I don't want to even go what they did to women and kids and men and so on. We are looking at sub-animals, not subhuman, sub-animals. Even animals don't do this. You see, that's what these Arabs did, and so on, Hamas, and so on, right? So anybody would look at this and say, what? They all deserve death. Is there any question about that what they deserve? They all deserve to die. Yet everybody's screaming for what? It's unbelievable. It's like Israel is the perpetrator, not Hamas. They're all screaming, right? And think about what this is, the evil. I mean, you have a character like Joe Biden, which is incredible. And Biden, by the way, is the present-day Achashverosh. And if you want to know who the present-day Haman is, it's Blinken. Blinken and the Democratic Party. And you look at them and you say, are they crazy? Hamas just committed an unbelievable violent act against the Jews. Not only have they done that, but they vowed to repeat it over and over again. And that's together with Hezbollah and the Houthis and Iran and so on, you see, which is incredible. So we're looking at a country, Israel, that's an existential threat. That's really what they're facing, an existential threat by the Arabs. So not only are they existentially threatened, but what's also happening is, look at the crime that these people did. And if you think it's only the Hamas, you're wrong. Because they have polls out where they took polls of the Arabs, the Palestinians in Gaza, and 80%, some people even have it as high as 85%, but at least 80% of the Arabs, the Palestinians, the Gazans, are okay, and they are in agreement with what Hamas did. Do you believe that? And many of them participated in the brutality of what happened. So what are we talking here? The one who's guilty is not only the one who murders, the one who's cheered on, the one who has collaborators, and so on. So think about that, And not only that, when you really begin to think about something, you take a look at Israel, right? I mean, take a look at Israel's relationship with America. Israel, right, is an incredible loyal ally. They're probably the greatest ally America ever had. That's how much they're with America. They share secrets with each other. Israel has a tremendous intelligence agency, and they're a tremendous part of the sharing of secrets. They have warned America of so many things that can go on, you see. Not only that, Israel is a true democracy, and America is sworn to defend democracies. That's really what they want. And Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, you see. Not only that, Hamas committed a crime that everybody recognizes as one of the most heinous and barbaric crimes ever committed. That's what they see, you see. So doesn't justice say that there should be retribution, right? Which is incredible. And not only that, but they say that they're going to do it again, you see. So one would think that America would be completely behind Israel, you see. So what do we see? Not only is America telling Israel, and if you don't listen, we're going to deny you the armaments, right? They tell you have to have a ceasefire. Why should we have a ceasefire? Why? These people committed a crime which is unheard of. And they, not only that, but they say they're going to do it again and again. So what are you talking about? What do you mean a ceasefire? What does even that mean in the laws of justice? And you're worried about the Gazans? The Gazans themselves say that they're in full agreement with what Hamas do. This is your compassion for the murderers, and the collaborators and the well-wishers? Like, what are you talking about? You crazy? Is this what you do in your country, a court of law? Right? And it's not only that. You're worried about what? Humanitarian aid? You're worried about humanitarian aid to people that have 80% wanted this to happen to the Jewish people? And you're worried about humanitarian aid to these people? Right? Justice itself would say that they should be destroyed because they are aiding and abetting Hamas. So now you're worried about humanitarian aid? Were you worried about humanitarian aid when you carpet bombed Dresden in World War II? You wiped out the whole city, man, woman, and child. Were you worried then about humanitarian aid? Talk about hypocrisy. But not only that, Joe Biden, he's given how much money to Iran? Could you imagine he says that he's going to help Israel? Meanwhile, he's giving billions of dollars to Iran. You're a traitor. That's called treachery. In modern parlance. It's traitor. How could you aid and abet an enemy of the Jewish state? But they're not just an enemy. They don't want to kill the Jews because of territory. They're not interested in the state. You stupid fool. They don't want a second state. There's no such thing. They want a caliphate. They want to destroy all Israel. So what are you talking about, a two-state solution? How stupid can you be? And there's taka chazals that say, it's an argument, was Achashverosh a fool, or he knew what he was doing? In this case, it's obviously Biden is a fool. So here's a man who's aiding and abetting an existential destroyer of Israel. Under Trump, all they had left was $4 billion. That was all that was left in the Iranian treasury. And now they're worth between $70 and $100 billion because Biden doesn't enforce any of the sanctions. He has aided and allowed Iran to do this. All their money goes to Hezbollah and Hamas, the Houthis, the Syrians, or whatever. So how could you talk about an ally, Israel, on one side and stab them in the back on the other? And not only that, you're worried about humanitarian aid because all of a sudden you're compassionate? Joe Biden is a murderer, right? Why? Because he aids and abets the fentanyl traffic that is going on in the South. Over 130,000 American citizens die every year because of fentanyl by the cartels. And he's the only one appointed to stop it because he's the president. He has violated his constitutional oath of office. That itself is a crime. That Congress does nothing. Nobody does anything. And he's worried. You're worried about humanitarian aid to the Arabs? What about humanitarian aid to your own citizens? You're watching them all die. Does he understand what it is for somebody's child to die from a fentanyl overdose? And they said tons and tons of fentanyl all over the United States. And he does nothing, How can a man have a heart of stone? If it wasn't true, it would be hard to believe what he's doing. How can a man want to have compassion on the Arabs, humanitarian aid, in one shot, and his own citizens, he doesn't care if they're all dying? I'm not even going into the misery that 2/3 of America cannot make ends meet because of his crazy lunacy of his laws, the inflation or the energy. And what about all the crimes in all the cities? Does he have any idea what it is to live in a city that's filled with crime? Where is this guy's head? And he's talking about humanitarian aid. You should know, it's laughable, his concern about humanitarian aid. You see? And he dares bring that up. It's beyond belief. And it's not only Biden who's an Achashverosh, who is convinced by Blinken to offer the two-state solution to people who don't even want a two-state solution. They want a caliphate. They want to wipe out all the Jews. Doesn't this fool recognize that? It's laughable if it wasn't so tragic. And then what's also you can't believe, you take a look at America, I don't understand, Lincoln once said, Abraham Lincoln, America is the last great hope of mankind. And he was right. But then you look at America, excuse me, America? Do you see the anti-Semitism all over America? It's all over the place. In the colleges, right? In the media, in the businesses. You call this justice? You call this the last great hope for the world? America has sunk to an unbelievable depth of evil. It's hard to believe that this could happen in 3 years. And the answer, of course. Because that's what the laws are, you see. If you can get away with it, of course, then you get away with it. Because that's what the laws of America really are. They're only as good as a person is righteous. It's not the law that's righteous, it's the person that's righteous. And therefore he will make sure that he observes the laws. But if the people are evil, who cares about the laws? All they are is manipulated, as what they're doing with Trump. So it's inconceivable that after what happened on October 7th, there are people all over America screaming for the blood of the Jews. Are they crazy? It's like, do you realize what the Arabs did to the Jews on October 7th? And like I say, one has to stare in disbelief at what you're looking at in America. And this is America. This is not I'm not even talking about Europe, where there's a tremendous rise of anti-Semitism, you see. So this is Purim, because we Jews have believed in America, right? That America is truth and justice, right? And righteousness. It's nonsense. What righteousness? We look at what's happening now and we can't believe the betrayal and the treachery, the perfidy of what America is doing. Now, Biden, why is Biden doing this? You see, why is he doing that? We know he's senile, but is he really that stupid that he doesn't understand? How could you, on one side, say you're an ally of Israel, and on the other side take a knife and stab them in the back at the same time? Because we know what Iran wants to do. Iran wants to destroy the Middle East. They want to take over the Middle East. They dream of jihad, which is to take over, that Islam should be the religion of the world. And of course, after Israel, of course it's going to be the entire world. So don't you understand? And it started with Obama. This man's out of his mind, Obama. And Biden is nothing more than the third term of Obama. That's really what it is. But it's incredible to watch what is happening with these people, and so on, So we realize the evil, that in order for a law to work, it's the person that has to be righteous before the law, you see. And then you could depend on the law. But the American Jews, they have become enamored, right, of the goodness of America, and you wonder, where is this goodness, and so on. And not only that, why is Biden doing this? Why did Ahasuerus sell out the Jews? You know why? Obviously he didn't like the Jews, or else why would he be sold out? But he was bought off by 10,000 talents of silver. Haman, right? So he put the value of money greater than the destruction of an entire people for nothing, for no reason. That's why Ahasuerus. You see? What about Biden? You know why Biden is doing this? Because the Arabs in Dearborn, Michigan are very angry at him because they see him supporting Israel. So they're not going to vote for him. So he's very concerned that he's going to lose the votes of the Arab citizens, you see. So therefore, he's got to change his tactic with Israel. He is forcing them. He wants Hamas to survive. He's forcing them to be humanitarian aid to people that want to murder them. And he wants to have a ceasefire, which means in the end, we know what that means, that Hamas will try it again and again and again and so on. So Biden is being bought off. Same thing Ahasuerus. Biden is being bought off with his desire to be president. Right, that's the bribe. And because he's Joe Biden, he's a president, he can issue an executive order, he can distort the law, he does. You're looking at a living incarnate of Ahasuerus, that he's willing to allow genocide of the Israeli people so he can vote, so he can become the next president of the United States. You ever see anything like that? That he's put the worth of the votes of the Arabs in Dearborn, Michigan. He's put their votes at a higher level, right, to him than the life of all the Israelis. Because if Hamas survives, forget about it. We don't even know what's going to happen. The next time what Hamas is going to do, and they really want to do it in the first time, they're going to unite with Hezbollah and Iran and the Houthis and the Syrians, right? And they're all going to, and the Arabs in the territories, they're all going to unite at the same time. And this time, they're not going to make that mistake. You see, doesn't he understand that he's being bought off to get votes so all the Israelis can drop dead? Is this man normal? People do not realize that. People just don't understand because they become enamored of the myth of what America used to be, hopefully. And America has changed. You take a look at the colleges, they're all left, they're all progressive, and almost all of them are anti-Semites. And that's been coming out in the last year or two, which is incredible. And this has been going on for at least 40 years. You see, and these are the colleges that train the future youth, the future leaders of America. Who do you think are going to Harvard, Pennsylvania, and Columbia, and whatever, and so on? It's the future leaders of the United States. So if they're all anti-Semites, what do you think this country is going to look like in 20 years? It's amazing. People don't understand what is happening. People are blind. You see that America is no longer what it used to be. They have taken the deal like Ahasuerus. Joe Biden is Ahasuerus. He's taken the bribe because he's desperate to become president. But that's really all he wants. Joe Biden is a glamour boy. He wants the glamour and the glitz of being the president of the United States. You see, he's dreamt about that for 50 years. That's really all it's about. He's not interested really in America. Couldn't care less really about America. Or else why would any man sit back while people die left and right from fentanyl? You know how much sex trafficking there is going on in the South? Human trafficking? How much evil, how much pain and suffering is going on because of the open southern border? And he doesn't care because he wants to be president. But that's what he's all about. I'm not even going into the crime family called Biden crime family. I'm not even looking at that and how much money he's absconded with, how much bribery he's taken. They say calculate to at least $30 million, whatever. You have to laugh at this. I mean, this guy's getting away with unbelievable criminal behavior and so on. And behind him is the media. And behind that is the Democratic Party. It's all they all want Biden to be president because he's an unbelievable puppet. This is America, right? This is Purim. This is Purim 2024. Ahasuerus was bribed. He was bought out, and he decided it's worth it to commit genocide, to kill every man, woman, and child. That's what Purim is about, right? That's what he wanted. You have any idea what that means? Think about that. Every man, woman, and child living in Persia, which was every Jew, he wanted dead. For what? So he could have 10,000 talents? You have to understand what the height of evil that is. So Biden is going to deny Israel ammunition. He's forcing them, right, to make peace with absolute murderers. Why? So he can endear himself to the Arabs in Dearborn, Michigan, and therefore his votes or his desire to be president is greater than the existential threat of an ally like Israel? Is this, think about what that means even. Yes, that's classic Ahasuerus. You see, and Blinken is his Haman. It's astounding when you think they are literally repeating what happened in Purim, except it's a modern day version. And the truth is, that's exactly what the Rebbe has taught us. He taught us a long time ago Don't be enamored by the laws of society, because in the end, many of them are false. Like I said, they're arbitrary. There's no righteousness in them. They can be manipulated. They're basically for separate groups. Don't do it. Only the Torah has laws that are righteous, holy. And if you want to live as a civilized nation, then you must observe those laws. Because that's the only way a civilized nation can exist, is by observing the laws of the Torah. Believe it or not, it has nothing to do with the laws of mankind. And how many times does a Jew, or the nation of Jews, have to witness the utter betrayal of nation after nation after nation that is always trying to kill the Jewish people? You see. So we're not looking here about Purim, Purim that was. No. We now understand the answer to many questions. What is the essential message? The essential message of Purim is not rescue. That's another idea. The essential message of Purim is don't believe in the laws of nations. They can be changed in one day, and they can destroy you. And I'm not talking about harming you, I'm talking about genocide. That's how bad it can be. And really, you're looking at genocide. If the Americans had their way, these people, protesters, they would kill the Jews. Thank God they can't, you see. But you're talking about people, when they say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that's genocide, right? They're not saying a two-state solution. Palestine will be free, not as a two-state, but completely. That's genocide. And these are American citizens. These are college youth. These are people who have lived and grown up in America, where freedom and liberty and respect for the individual is supposed to be here. How long will Jews be fooled, you see? Therefore, you begin to realize that's what the Russian wanted to teach the Jews. And imagine that this lesson is so important that he had an entire event called Purim in order to teach them this lesson. And to the Jews there was tremendous oira, light, enlightenment. You see, that's what there was. And that's why the Jews said, we're tired of this. We realize that only the Torah is the only way man can be a civilized person. So, if you want to celebrate Purim, celebrate it this year. Because we are watching Purim. We are watching it happen in our time and so on. The truth is, it's been happening for thousands of years. It's just interesting that Avram Avinu said that to Abimelech, He saw there's no fear of God and so on, And that's the only way a person will not deviate from real justice and so on. In any case, those are very important ideas which I wanted to, convey to everybody. Thank you.